1 in the morning Moscow time, and they had no anticipation. So we're actually in the east wing of the White House, and the president says, we've had a pretty good meeting. I'm going to go call Vladimir Putin and see what he says about it. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to call him next week? And he's like, no, what time is it in Moscow? Let's call him right now. And I think one of the things I've realized about President Trump's leadership is he cuts through the BS of some of these diplomatic protocols and just says, I'm going to get things done. If I want to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody. You had a lot of the Europeans who were saying, no, there needs to be proper, vetting, and the teams have to prepare the phone call and blah, 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 blah. And the president was like, no. I want to talk to the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. And I think that kind of no holds barred, no BS diplomacy is part of the reason why we've made the progress we have. And we've made a lot of progress, Laura. Look, who knows what's going to happen? The president tells me this all the time. You can never say with certainty what the outcome in this situation is going to be. But we now have the Russians talking to the Ukrainians. They're talking details about what would be necessary on each side to stop the fighting and stop the killing. We've made more progress in 3 months than the country had made in 3 years in stopping this conflict. And I think it's because sometimes you just need a president who will pick up the phone and call somebody.
This is my video update on this Thursday afternoon, August the 21st, coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with some breaking news, which is that Italian police have arrested the first suspect in the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. That's right. They arrested some guy who goes by the name of Sergei K, a Ukrainian citizen. That's all we know. Sergei K. He is the first person who allegedly, according to Italian authorities and to the German media, he was on the sailboat. That's the words that they're going with. He was on the sailboat that placed the explosives on the Nord Stream pipeline and blew that sucker up. And he's one of many. He's one member of a team that was on this sailboat, and he is now on his way to Germany. So it wasn't Gilligan, it wasn't the professor or Ginger, not even Marianne. And I was pretty positive it was Marianne, but nope. It ended up being Sergei K. That's the guy that is suspected of blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. According to DW, Germany arrests made over Nord Stream pipeline explosions. Finally, after 3+ years, what are we talking about? September of 2022? Has it really been that long? I think it's September of 2022. I'm terrible with dates. Anyway, finally, after 3 years, the Italian police and the German authorities, they got their guy. It's Sergei K. Oh boy. So yeah, they're wrapping up the whole Nord Stream thing, huh? They got their first arrest. The Ukrainian citizen, Sergei K. So Russian hackers, they entered the computers of the Ukraine command, of the Ukraine military general staff, and they ended up getting the list, the database list of Ukrainian soldiers killed and wounded. And they revealed that number to be 1.7 million Ukrainian soldiers. This is a hacker group called Killnet. They've published the full list with names, photos, addresses, all kinds of things. It's online. It's on social media. Who knows if this is real or not? Impossible to know. That number seems very high, but who knows? Who knows? I am reading that it's 1.7 KIA and wounded. But even that is a bit sketchy. I've actually read some reports which say this is 1.7 million KIA. I don't know. It does seem a bit high. But anyway, that's the number that these guys have published. And it runs contrary to Zelensky's claims. Well, it runs contrary to Trump's Truth Social post that he put out a couple of weeks ago. It runs contrary to Zelensky's claim of, what did Zelensky say back in January? He said 30,000, and I believe in April or May, he said 46,000 KIA. He was talking about KIA. So 1.7 million, according to this hacker group, this Russian hacker group. Alexander, in his video update yesterday, he put out some interesting information on military casualties from this conflict. He's been getting information from a very reliable source who revealed to Alexander two studies that have been conducted, one on the Russian side, one on the Ukrainian side. And in his video update, Alexander explains that what these studies were doing, both from Russia and from Ukraine, is they were following the soldiers, a sample group of soldiers, not in the thousands, but in the hundreds to high hundreds. So it wasn't a huge group, but it wasn't a small group either. And so they followed the soldiers from when they enlisted or when the military conflict began, and they tracked them for a lengthy amount of time to see if they were still around, if they were still active on the front lines, if they were still part of the military, if they had been wounded and then were able to go back, if they were wounded and not able to go back, if they were killed. And the findings of this study is interesting. Now, Alexander was very careful in his video update to explain that in no way is this an accurate number of casualties. Obviously, there could be a lot of flaws in the sample group, in the way this study and the sampling was conducted. There could be a lot of flaws, and in no way should this be seen as representative of the actual casualty figures on either side. But it could give us a hint of the trajectory or of the trend of casualties in this conflict from both militaries. And what he revealed was that from the Ukrainian side of things, 11% of those who joined the army in 2022 are still in the army, while 91% were either wounded or dead. I believe the number from the sample group was 79% or 81%. I forgot what the exact number was. I think actually 81% of the Ukrainian soldiers that were tracked had been killed. The other percentage were wounded, and then you had 11% that were actually still part of the military. On the Russian side of things, 79% of Russian soldiers were still serving, while 21% were either wounded or KIA. Once again, that's just a sample. There's without a doubt a lot of flaws in this sampling, and there's a lot of things that I'm sure people can question and take apart with this sample. But maybe it shines some light on the actual trend of things, at least when it comes to casualties. Definitely check out Alexander's video from yesterday. He gets more into it than I will on this video. I believe it's at the hour 12 minute mark in his video update from yesterday. And I'll put a link in the description box down below to his video, so you can definitely check it out. So Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he was meeting with the Jordanian foreign minister yesterday, and then he held a press conference, and the Russian foreign minister, he said some very interesting things when it comes to the possible bilateral talks between Russia and Ukraine, when it comes to security guarantees. And he also touched on the recognition of ethnic Russians, the Russian language, the Russian church, the Russian culture, should there be some sort of a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. And this is what Lavrov said when it comes to the bilateral talks, the possible bilateral talks between Zelensky and Putin that Trump is trying to set up. Lavrov said that Russia has no problem with upgrading the level of the negotiations and the negotiators as well. And what this means is what we have been saying on the derail and what I've been saying on this channel over the past couple of days, which is that the way Russia is going to approach this bilateral talk, if it does actually happen, is that they are possibly, he didn't say this, Lavrov, he just said that they're ready to upgrade the level of the negotiations and the negotiators. But if we do get there, and there is going to be a high level negotiation between Zelensky and Putin, the way Russians are going to approach this so that they don't contradict their statements about Zelensky's illegitimacy, is that the chief negotiator could be Russian President Vladimir Putin. Who would be representing Ukraine? It doesn't matter for the Russians. What they could do is they could say that our president will be the chief negotiator, and if Zelensky does show up to the negotiations, then this does not run counter to the Russian claims that Zelensky is illegitimate. They are not recognizing Zelensky as the legitimate president of Ukraine. He is merely acting as the chief negotiator for the other side. So we called this one. We called this one from our live stream from about 4 or 5 days ago, when we first talked about the possibility of bilateral talks between Putin and Zelensky, and we talked about how the Russians, given the statements from Ushakov, at the time it was Ushakov, given the statement from Ushakov, this is how Russia was going to approach this, by leveling up the negotiators and the negotiations, and possibly having Putin represent Russia. So, the interesting part to this is that if these talks do take place, and Putin represents Russia as the chief negotiator, and Zelensky represents Ukraine as the chief negotiator, this also solves Ukraine's issue when it comes to not speaking with Russian President Putin, with the president of Russia. You know how they have that, I guess it's in the Constitution, or it's a parliament law, which says that Ukraine will not speak to the president of Russia in direct negotiations or something like that. If they position it as, if Russia positions it as Putin not being the president of Russia, but just being the chief negotiator, then the Ukraine side can present it as Ukraine is not negotiating directly with the president of Russia, but what they are doing is they are is they are negotiating with the chief negotiator of Russia, who just happens to be President Putin. So they could twist it around in a way so that this doesn't also run contrary to the law that they have, which says that they cannot enter into direct negotiations with the president of Russia, with President Putin. So this actually works out in a way for both sides, if we get into direct talks between Putin and Zelensky in the capacity of chief negotiators, if we get there. Lavrov, by the way, did not say anything about Putin becoming the chief negotiator or anything like that. He did not mention that. What Lavrov did say is that if there is a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine, then without a doubt, the rights of ethnic Russians, of Russian speakers, of the Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Russian culture has to be respected and part of law. That the language is an official language, and the ethnic Russians' rights are absolutely protected in a post-conflict Ukraine. And when Lavrov said this, when he made this statement, what was Zelensky's response? His response is that he rejects this. Yeah, he rejected it. Zelensky said, we only have one culture and one language, and that is Ukraine and Ukrainian. So right away, Zelensky, he rejected the recognition of the Russian language and the Russian culture and religion. Western values, everyone. Those Western values. Anyway, Zelensky fits right in with the group of collective West leaders, doesn't he? So, security guarantees, the big one that everyone is talking about. Security guarantees. So what did Lavrov say? He said that when it comes to security guarantees, this had pretty much been resolved in Istanbul in 2022. And Ukraine actually brought this up, and they agreed to it. So they're the ones that actually presented this formula for security guarantees. This is back in 2022, the first Istanbul talks that Boris Johnson sabotaged. But both sides had effectively agreed to a framework for security guarantees. And what it was, long story short, was the Security Council, maybe some other countries as well, but basically the foundation was going to be the countries that are members of the Security Council providing the security guarantees. So Russia, China, US, France, and the UK. Right? That's what they agreed on. Now, the other thing that they agreed on was that, this is back in 2022, was that there would be no foreign troops in Ukraine, right? No foreign military. And if there were to be military deployed to Ukraine, then the guarantor states would have a veto in the deployment of military forces, which would effectively mean that Russia would have a veto to troops being sent to Ukraine. But of course, it would also mean that the United States would have a veto, etc. So that was what was agreed on back in 2022, and that's what Lavrov mentioned in his statement. And he said, "Look, I don't know why why are we going round and round with these security guarantees and trying to make the security guarantees into some sort of NATO, but it's not NATO, Article 5 protection, but it's not Article 5 protection." He said, this is nonsense. Russia's not going to accept this. We're not going to accept some sort of quasi-NATO Article 5 type of thing. Security guarantees have to include Russia. It can't have any, there can't be any foreign troops in Ukraine. And the guarantor countries, including Russia, of course, will have a veto on whatever is decided, specifically with deploying troops to Ukraine. That's got to be in there if there's going to be any security guarantees. At a minimum, that has to be the framework for security guarantees. Now, back in 2022, they also talked about more countries being guarantor states. For example, I believe India was mentioned, Turkey was mentioned, I believe Israel was mentioned. They mentioned like 3 or 4 other countries who could take part as guarantor states. But for the most part, what they agreed on back in Istanbul in 2022 was basically the UN Security Council, those countries becoming the foundation of guarantors for Ukraine. And everyone was cool with that until Boris Johnson came to town, right? So that's what Lavrov said. He said, forget about all of this NATO, but not NATO, Article 5, but not Article 5 security guarantees for Ukraine. What we're going to work off of is what was already agreed on in Istanbul, and we'll take it from there. You know what? I think Russia's terms will now be amended because Russia holds all the cards, and I bet you now they're going to take it one step further, and they're going to say, you know what? Back in 2022, we were okay with France and the UK, but to be quite honest, what do we need them in this grouping for, right? What are they going to really do other than just muddle things up and sabotage stuff? So I could definitely see Russia proposing some sort of guarantee structure, which involves the United States, China, and Russia, with the terms of vetoing troop deployments and no foreign militaries in Ukraine and stuff like that. But you don't really need France and the UK. You don't need Turkey or any of the other countries. Just deal with the big 3, right? That's all you need. So anyway, that's what Lavrov said. Of course, the collective West is flipping out. They don't like anything that Lavrov said. They want this security guarantee thing to be only collective West countries, not Russia. And Zelensky, he is saying the same thing. He said he completely rejects the structure of security guarantees that Lavrov is floating out there. And Zelensky also said that he rejects China as a guarantor. He said Ukraine doesn't need China. That is what Zelensky said. Man, Zelensky went from a yes man at the White House to a no man. Everything at the White House the other day was yes, 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 yes. Now it's no, 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 no. Jeez, Zelensky. Anyway, Zelensky doesn't like any of this, nor do the Europeans. So that's what Lavrov said. Oh, Lavrov also took a dig at the Kallas. He said, let's see. He said Putin's top diplomat also hit out at the EU's top diplomat Kaja Kallas, an ardent Russia hawk, whose statements, he said, are a degradation of the foreign policy methods. A degradation of the foreign policy methods. Jeez. He's a diplomat, man, Lavrov. He could have said a lot harsher things about Kaja Kallas. He could have trolled her a whole lot harder. Instead, he just says they're a degradation of foreign policy methods. He's a diplomat, man. He is a true freaking diplomat. The GOAT, Lavrov. So that's what Lavrov said in his statement. Zelensky's rejecting everything. No China, no Russia. What we need to have is NATO, but don't call it NATO. Meloni, the Italian prime minister, she's very happy with this NATO-light arrangement, because this is kind of her idea, isn't it? This NATO-light idea. She said, I'm happy that we will begin from a proposal which is, let's say, the Article 5 model. They're even saying it's Article 5. It's Article 5, but it's not Article 5, but it's Article 5. Meloni. the more I hear from Maloney, the more I come to understand that she's not very bright. She is not very bright. So let's see, is that... Yeah, I think that's everything with security guarantees. So the Russian military, they smashed Ukraine yesterday. 560 drones, as well as a bunch of missiles of all kinds, calibres, Kinzhals, Skanders, Zircon, everything. They threw everything at Ukraine yesterday, and they hit just about everything in Ukraine, in all areas of Ukraine. They hit a lot of energy infrastructure. They are really going after the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. You know, winter is going to come up in what, a month and a half, 2 months, maybe even less than that. Things are gonna start to get cold in that part of the world, and the Russian military, they are really smashing Ukraine's energy infrastructure. They also hit military production facilities. They also hit military air bases and training grounds. They just smashed everything yesterday. The interesting part about the Russian strike was that they hit an area way in the west, in the Transcarpathia region, Mukachevo, long considered a secure rear zone. Russian Kalibr missiles struck Flex Ltd. This site, run by the US corporation Flextronics, localized Western electronics for drones and precision systems, SMT assembly lines, testing stations, and integration equipment for Bayraktar, Warmate, Punisher, and Vampire UAVs were destroyed. The strike represents a strategic rupture. Ukraine has lost its core node for adapting Western microelectronics to its weapons platforms. And when you look at a map of this area of Mukachevo, man, it is like right on the border with Hungary and Slovakia. And a lot of the weapons, a lot of the component parts and the chips and everything that this Flex Ltd company was using at this facility, they were passing through, from what I understand, passing through Slovakia to make it to this small town, and the Russian military just completely obliterated this facility. So that happened yesterday, and we're getting reports that the Russian military, they've got another breakthrough in Pokrovsk. So the line was stabilized by the Ukraine military, by Zelensky, stabilized just enough so that he could go to DC and not have a complete meltdown on the front lines. But now that the meeting in DC is over and a couple of days have passed, it looks like the Russians are breaking through once again in Pokrovsk. So the stabilization appears to not have held up for too long. So Lindsey Graham, he posted on X about designating Russia as a sponsor of terrorism, a state sponsor of terrorism. And once again, this references the Melania letter. This is what Lindsey Graham posted. During the course of the Russian-Ukraine war, Russia has kidnapped over 19,000 Ukrainian children. Stealing children from their home country is a despicable and barbaric act. As I have been saying since earlier this year, I intend to push legislation to designate Russia a state sponsor of terrorism under US law if they do not return the children. This designation will make doing business with Putin's Russia radioactive for other countries and businesses. Yeah, basically, if they were to do such a thing, then there would be no diplomacy with Russia ever again. for the United States or just about any country in the collective West. They would not be able to talk to Russia, to deal with Russia. It would destroy diplomacy with Russia forever if this actually made it through. And he's basing all of this on the Melania letter. And I posted something about this on X. I posted that this Melania letter, this seemed like a setup. Trump bringing a letter from Melania and handing it to Putin, and then the contents of that letter was released. I said, this is some sort of setup. And of course, you use Melania, right? You use her because, you know, when it comes to the America First and the MAGA crowd, you know, Melania is very loved by MAGA and the America First. So they would never imagine Melania, her letter, her words being used in such a way, in a geopolitical leverage type of way. But that's what's happening here. And that's what I posted on X. I got a whole bunch of pushback. You're taking things too far, Alex. You're letting things get to you. Your imagination is running wild. Here's the post from Lindsey Graham. He references a Fox News article, which also talks about the Melania letter and also talks about the 19,000 children and how Russia should be a state sponsor of terrorism. This is Lindsey Graham's new line, right? And it was all kicked off with that letter, and Lindsey Graham has jumped on this. And now he is pushing the Trump White House. He's pushing the Senate, and he's pushing the Trump White House to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, which would just basically mean that there would never be any communication between Russia and the United States. The foreign policy president of the United States, everybody, Lindsey Graham, he is looking to sabotage the peace process and negotiations and rapprochement between Russia and the United States pretty much forever. That is what he is looking to do. And you know, the interesting part about this whole narrative is that during the negotiations, I believe was it the first negotiations or the second negotiations, the recent negotiations in Istanbul, not 2022, but the most recent ones, I believe it was the second round of talks. The Russians actually asked for the list of the children from the Ukraine side, the 19,000. And what Ukraine handed to Russia was a list of 319. Right? They didn't hand a list of 19,000. They handed a list of 319, for which the Russian authorities, they took that list and they started to track everybody down and to identify where they were. And they were working with the Ukrainian side to identify the locations and the whereabouts of all of these 319 children. But my understanding of things, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, my understanding was that the Russians asked for the full list, and instead what they got was a list of 319. So it looks like Lindsey Graham's statements and the Fox News reporting is inaccurate. That's how it looks. So yesterday I said that Trump called Orban at the insistence of the European leaders so that he can push Orban to drop the block on Ukraine entering the European Union. And it looks like that reporting was also false, because the Hungarian foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, he came out with a statement and said there was no such communication between Trump and Orban, and the U.S. president did no such thing. He did not press the Hungarian prime minister to drop the blocking of Ukraine's accession process into the European Union. Hungarian Foreign Minister Szijjártó denied Western media reports about Trump's conversation with Orban regarding Ukraine's accession to the EU. Not only was this topic not raised, but there was no conversation at all, he claims. Man, the Western media is just all misinformation, it seems, huh? All misinformation. That's coming from the Hungarian foreign minister. So who's telling the truth? Is it is it Western mainstream media? I believe the report first came out by Bloomberg that Trump had called Orban about lifting the blockade on Ukraine's accession into the European Union. I believe it was first floated out by Bloomberg. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Who's telling the truth, the Hungarian foreign minister or the collective West mainstream media? I'll place my money on the Hungarian foreign minister as telling the truth. Let's do a clown world and we can wrap this video up. A very, very difficult video, everybody, because I am cooking out here in Nicosia, man. Oh boy, I can't wait for summer to end. Let's talk about the White House meeting again. Man, that White House meeting has provided us with a whole bunch of clown worlds, huh? I guess that was to be expected. No surprise there that the White House meeting between Trump and the European vassals was going to provide us with all kinds of clown world material. So there are rumors, and I want to stress that these are, oh, look at that lizard. Hey, my friend, don't move, don't move. We're your friends. All right, we got a lizard. Oh, my work is done. My work is done. So these are just rumors. And it's originating from a Substack account, which noticed a statement from a German, I believe a German MP, a member of Merz's government, who had said that during the White House meeting, Trump wanted to speak to all the leaders, right, of Europe. and they told Ursula to leave the room, man. They told Vandermaat to leave the room because they said, look, Ursula, you're not a leader of anything, right? You weren't voted into anything. You're not a leader of a country, of a sovereign nation. So we want to have a meeting with just the leaders of the countries, and we don't need the European Union commissioner at this meeting. And so they had her step out and leave the room. These are just rumors. I want to stress that. Ursula von der Leyen told to leave room during multilateral talks at Trump's Washington summit, not a leader nor an elected head of state. Remember how the Chinese treated Ursula when she left China? They made her exit the airport in the lines that all of us go through, the passport control that we all go through. They made her go through those lines, no special treatment. Or Erdogan, when he met with Ursula and Charles Michel at the time. This was like 4 years ago, I want to say, 3-4 years ago. And he had one chair next to him, and Charles Michel sat at that chair, and they made Ursula sit on the sofa way down there. It looks like the same thing happened to her this time at the White House. Oh man, the statement from this official, according to this report, is that the pushback that they gave is that Ursula, she does represent the European Union, and she represents the citizens of the EU, and she also represents the countries that were not present at this White House meeting. 1 second, let me see here. Bundestag Vice President Omid Noripur said on Tuesday on the NTV program Früh Start that Ursula von der Leyen was made to leave the room during the Trump's meeting with European leaders in Washington. In the middle of yesterday's meeting, Ms. von der Leyen had to leave because the Americans said, we only want to talk to leaders. According to Noripur, the EU Commission president was kicked out of the room because the American politicians do not regard her as an elected head of state. Noripur immediately disputed this American viewpoint. Ms. von der Leyen represents over 400 million people. Yesterday, she was also the voice of the states that were not present, which are highly relevant to the dispute with Ukraine, such as Poland, the Baltic states, and the Czech Republic. Oh my God. She doesn't represent any country, man. Sorry, bro. You can cope all you want, man. She was elected to nothing, and she does not represent any sovereign state and and European citizens. Well, what's that? What is a European citizen? There's a Greek citizen, there's a Cyprus citizen, there's an Irish citizen, there's a German citizen. Oh, man. Ursula. Always providing us with good clown worlds, I have to admit. By the way, since we're talking about Germany, just to wrap up the video, Merz, he is not getting support for sending troops to Ukraine as part of the Macron-Stammer reassurance plan, right? They're planning to send troops into Ukraine if they get to some sort of a deal in Ukraine. So France and Germany, they're planning with U.S. commanders about how they're going to send troops to Ukraine, boots on the ground to Ukraine, and they're trying to recruit other countries in Europe to send the military to Ukraine. I believe Estonia said they're going to send 150 troops in this coalition of the willing reassurance forces, 150 troops. I thought Estonia had a military of like 10. Where did they get the rest of the 140? Did they like pick up 140 people off the streets or something? I thought their military was a grand total of 10 people. Anyway, they said something like 150. But Germany is having problems, or at least Merz is having problems getting support to send German troops to Ukraine to be part of this reassurance force. Not even members of his coalition are supporting this. Yeah, so that's Merz. Also, Syrskyi. Here's another interesting clown world. Syrskyi, the commander of Ukraine. Oh man, let's walk. As commander of Ukraine, he was giving an interview to the BBC, and he acknowledged that Ukraine was running short on manpower. This is Syrskyi. He said that we're running low on manpower. We're not able to recruit, and we just don't have the manpower anymore. And he said that the plan, get this, Syrskyi said that the plan in order to match Russia is that they're going to use robots. Yeah, he said they're going to use something like 15,000 robots are going to be deployed on the front lines, and that will, right away, 15,000 robots are going to be deployed on the front lines, and that will compensate for the inability to recruit and the manpower issues. So the solution, according to Syrskyi, is robots. Maybe one day, definitely one day, robots, yeah. Robots will be on the front lines, but I don't think it's happening in the next couple of months, Commander Syrskyi. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We're on X, we're on Rumble, we're on Telegram. We're pretty much on everything. So check us out on various platforms. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch, like what I'm wearing in this video update. I will catch everyone tomorrow. Take care.